Mon nom c'est André Corrière et je suis ici à l'école Saint-Marie. Ma première année, c'était une année normale, c'est-à-dire qu'on est arrivé très excités comme des petits-enfants. Mais la deuxième année, c'est un peu différent que la première année. La maîtresse nous a expliqué qu'à la droite, c'était les anges, puis à la gauche, c'était les diables. Alors, incroyablement, ma première journée dans la grade 2, j'étais assis avec les diables. Puis j'imagine pourquoi on était des diables. Je ne savais pas. On était souvent mis en arrière et assis dans une chaise puis regarder au mur en arrière puis, et ne pas participer dans la classe. C'était une année très, très difficile pour moi parce que, excuse, j'étais un petit diable. When I was born in 1958, everything was in English. And so when the nurse asked my mom the name of her child, she said André Pierre-Edouard. And the nurse said, well, what's that in English? And she said, well, it's Andrew Peter Edward. So they signed my birth registration as Andrew Peter Edward, not realizing that that was going to be my legal name. And hence the beginning of a good Métis boy here in Manitoba. In those days, English Canada had settled here in Winnipeg, and there was certainly a racial tension between the French and the English. And if you were French-speaking Michif, that added either a further tension. Saint-Marie is a Catholic-run day school. It's an elementary school from grade 1 to grade 6. And it was completely run by the Catholic Church. The teachers were nuns. There was a priest on site at all time. My grade 1 teacher in the École Saint-Marie was normal in the sense that she was a loving teacher. She was a nun who loved being with children and very caring. My second year teacher was noticeably crueler to the Métis children. She was a very stern teacher. If we did not pay attention, we would get hit by rulers. She also threw chalks at children. I don't recall her throwing or hitting too many of the angels, but on that side we got our share of discipline. One day in late September, early October, we were talking about catechism, and one of the young ladies asked the teacher why Jesus was only covered in a loincloth on the cross. And the nun, the teacher, went on a tangent about little girls should not be looking at the male body, naked male body, and the little boys should not be looking at the female naked body, and otherwise they would, turn to stone and burn in hell, and put really the fear in us to behave. A week or so before, I was visiting my uncles who were in their 20s, and I came across a black and white magazine with naked girls, and I remember that I had seen this, and it stirred something in me, and I explained that to the nun that yes, something did happen, and the children laughed, and the nun became really upset with me, and came and for disturbing the class, I don't know, grabbed me by the shoulder and picked me up out of my chair, and dragged me to down the hallway to the church portion of the school. she went and got the priest, and talking fairly loud, they guided me to the confession box and said, you're going to have to confess for your sins. Je me suis mis à genoux pour dire la confession. Puis le prêtre, il a dit, c'est quoi ton nom et pourquoi tu es ici? Puis j'ai dit, mon nom c'est André Carrière et puis je ne sais pas pourquoi je suis ici. Puis le prêtre est devenu un peu fâché, il me demandait encore, pourquoi tu es ici? Bien, la sœur a dit qu'il fallait que je confesse mes péchés, mais c'est quoi mon péché? Puis il a ouvert la porte et il dit, sors. Oh, OK, je sors de la confession. Et puis il m'apporte en avant pour dire ma prière, puis penser de mes péchés. Puis il me dit, assis-toi pour dire ta prière. Puis il parlait pas mal fort, puis j'avais peur. Finalement, il me pogne par l'épaule, puis il me lève directement. Viens avec moi. Puis dans ce temps, ici, il y avait une place où les prêtres allaient pour se changer, puis il m'apportait dans une chambre spéciale pour parler un à un. I got scared and ran out of there back into the classroom. And the nun stopped me at the door coming in, grabbed me and turned me around outside of the classroom. I could hear the kids laughing again in the back in the classroom. And she took me down the hall where the janitor would have mops and brooms and stuff. En 1964, ici, il y avait un bassin. Quand on est arrivé, elle a ouvert l'eau. Et puis elle a pris une brosse du plancher, puis elle a commencé à me laver. Premièrement, elle m'a lavé les bras, puis tout le temps qu'elle me lavait, elle me disait que j'étais un petit sauvage, un petit polisson. Elle me disait des choses de même, un petit bâtard qui n'écoute jamais. Puis mes mains étaient toutes rouges, puis je pleurais. Ça a vraiment causé un impact de ma vie. Incroyable. My mom does not recall, but I do remember telling my mom. And my mom, she was a nurse at the St. Boniface Hospital who worked many hours and was very tired, and she did not know how to deal with what I said. But that whole year, my grades were in the 15 to 25% margin. I was treated the rest of the year as a little dirty little boy. And it was really hard, really hard. After failing grade 2, we moved to Windsor Park, and I went to another school, which was not was a public school. It was called La Sette, which is a French, all in French school. It was really tough. I started acting out, got into a few fights. And before he passed away in 2014, my father and I did talk about my experiences, and finally he shared with me before passing away that he did not go, he was abused in school as well by a priest. He was deeply impacted by the abuse that he suffered as well. And so my generation, my father's generation, made it very difficult for us to gain an education when you have to look over your shoulder, either because you're poor or because you're being a target for abuse. At the end of the day, both the federal government and the province have to take responsibility for, as well as the church, for permitting abuse that took place. Some parents did complain about abuse, and when doing so, the Catholic Church would move that priest to another school system. It's taken quite a few years for me to get to where I am today, and I'm hoping that other people can learn and learn to speak up, because at the end of the day, we're not protecting that little boy. We're protecting a system that is flawed, and that is a system that permitted child abusers to get away and have free access to children who are vulnerable. The impact of these experiences is long-lasting, and I'm 61 years old, and I'm only dealing with the trauma of these realities that I lived throughout my whole life, the denial that that had happened, and at the end of the day, I was protecting that little boy inside of me. But in reality, people need to know that that they fail. The system failed to protect us, and it's not about compensation. It's not about punishing the perpetrator, because I would imagine that gentleman is in his 90s or even have passed on. There's still a fundamental shift where society, when it comes to Métis people, First Nation people, we're still not given a fair opportunity to participate in employment. We were good as labor, farm laborers or factory laborers in its day, but never for position of leadership or trust. I want to say that today there's an awakening happening here in Canada, and we Indigenous people are tired of being polite and waiting for you to recognize us. So we're taking steps to recognize ourselves and take responsibility for our future.